So welcome back, everyone, to Best Trader I Know. That's the title that we're going with. We have ZenTrades here from CT, who's decided to put himself out there and come on a podcast and talk about himself a little bit, talk about some trading, some insights, hopefully some good advice that you and I can take away and apply. And by the sound of it, when he was talking about Audi, I reckon he's got some good stuff to really lay it on thick with us. So it's going to be pretty exciting. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you find anything interesting or have any questions. So yeah, let's get into it. Zen, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks for having me, Swiss. Yeah, first ever podcast, so go easy on me.
No, man.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's all good. It's good to get your smooth, buttery voice out there. I should probably let the audience know. I did meet Zen once through Blockchain Gods 69. I believe you came to an Upside event, I think it was.
Yeah, it was the Pudgy Oceana launch. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Peaking, so a lot of euphoric Pudgies getting around that event. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably read the room and thought, might be a good time to sell. Everyone's a bit too excited about some liquid JPEGs.
So I was shattered. I just have forever faded Pudgies, have never owned one. And then everyone's walking around with these like 30 ETH Pudgies. It's like Pudgy chains coming, it's all happening. And I was just Pudgy-less. Big fade from me.
Yeah, you and me both. But I had obviously the Brotatoes screaming in my ear to get one, and I was too dumb to realize what was going on at the time. But yeah, let's talk about you, man. So how long have you been in crypto for? What got you into to begin with?
Yeah, so I guess I've owned crypto since 2017. So that mid year in that year, like a lot of people in my class to 2017. But I guess I first heard about crypto, and this is like another massive fade from me. In 2013, I was actually backpacking. Like it's sort of just left uni, and I was backpacking around Central America, so like Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, some of these countries. And I met this Dutch guy who had a Bitcoin tattoo on his calf. And I sort of like became friends with him, and we did a lot of things, like went spearfishing in Panama and did some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And he was talking about it and said that, yeah, I mean, he'd bought a bunch and had been basically using it on the dark web on Silk Road, from the Netherlands. So he had been like sending stuff out in the mail and receiving Bitcoin on the other end. And because they were doing that, he thought, well, me and my business partner are just going to buy a bunch as well, because this thing's kind of cool. Like we're using it as this alternative currency. And so he'd bought a bunch. And then when I met him, he'd basically like retired and was traveling around at that point looking for a hostel to buy and like settle down and just like chill and like spend his days like surfing and fishing, which was kind of crazy. And he was an awesome dude. I remember I got home from the trip and I Googled like Bitcoin price.
Yeah.
And I saw it was at $100. It's like mid 2013 or like end of 2013, $100.
Yeah.
And over the past year, it had like from 2012, it had run up from sub $10. And I was like, damn, like this Dutch guy, like he's made like over 10 times his money. Like that's crazy.
Oh, from 10 to 100.
Yeah. Like, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, and like I had just met this guy who like retired off Bitcoin that had gone from sub 10 to 100. And so I'm naturally thinking like, damn, I wish that was me. This thing is over now.
Yes.
This guy has already like made it, retired. So like, oh, well, like, and just like forgot about it, like, which is crazy to think now. I'd never kept any of his details, and I have no idea what happened to him. I can only imagine he's possibly like one of the, I don't know if he kept any, or like he's so rich now though, if he'd already sort of like made it at $100 Bitcoin. But yeah, because I thought I'd missed it. So I like sort of forgot about it and faded. And then I completely forgot about it for like 4 years until mid 2017. One of my colleagues at work started ranting about Ethereum and talking about like smart contracts and a bunch of random stuff. So I like went home, checked the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and just like couldn't believe that Bitcoin was trading at 2000 US or whatever it was. And because I'd already faded once, I just like jumped straight on CoinSpot, deposited a bunch of money and aped into Bitcoin, Ethereum. And I think I bought Sia coin, like that storage coin.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like 0.0000001 cent. And like I thought, imagine how rich I'll be if it goes to $1 or to Bitcoin's price. So that classic, like, so that's why I've always like given a lot of weight to like the low price coins, because I also did that when I first joined crypto.
Oh wow! So you were similar to the XRP army in the sense that you were buying it like $1, thinking it could go to $10,000.
Yeah, exactly. Like unit price. Like I sort of didn't know. You sort of know market caps exist in stocks and stuff, but I really didn't know how crypto worked at that point. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, what if it goes to $1?
I think that's so interesting that you thought you were late, or like it was over from $10 Bitcoin or sub $10 Bitcoin all the way to $100 Bitcoin. Like, I think that's like a crazy mindset to have thought at that time.
Yeah, I mean, if it had been different, and maybe he had like, I met this guy and he just started buying Bitcoin, and he was like, hey, I just bought this thing called Bitcoin. It's only $100. I think it could go to like 10,000. Then I'd be like, oh, awesome. Like, I'll buy some. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But because I'd met this guy and he's like, oh, I've retired now off Bitcoin. It's just like, you think it's like, it's over now. Like, oh, I wish I was him. Like,
yeah.
I'm pretty shattered. Yeah.
Retiring off that trade at like such a low market cap and dollar price for Bitcoin is,
yeah.
pretty.
I mean, he was early adopter, I guess. I mean, because he was receiving Bitcoin on Silk Road for drugs, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so he must have, I mean, he probably had a massive stack of it already and then bought more. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That initial use case for Bitcoin. I mean, I think that's interesting about Bitcoin. I mean, the early days, people were using it.
Yeah.
I mean, as a currency. I mean, that was the initial idea. And I suppose even in 2017, when I got into it, and especially like in the 2018 bear market, where you're like clinging on to just like, fundamentals of what could this be? I think everyone really thought that Bitcoin could become like a global currency. And like, even with scale, people thought it would scale, like Lightning Network would come out in the next couple of years, and the Bitcoin as a currency might be used around the world. But I guess it hasn't really worked out like that. But yeah, I mean, that was where the conviction was. I mean, they were so idealistic at that point, especially 2017. Like CT was Bitcoin maxis. Like all the main characters were like the Bitcoin guys. Like, and they were all, the block size wars were going on. So there was like the miners, and then like Roger Ver and all the big guys, like all arguing on Twitter all day, every day. And that was basically CT. So there's like, Bitcoin was the thing, and everyone like believed it. We believed in the tech. You sit here now, and we sit here with like high FDV, like VC coins, and like we're trading like meme coins and stuff. Like, it's kind of a shame that some of those initial ideals and belief in Bitcoin are sort of gone. I mean, Bitcoin has ended up succeeding in its own way, I guess, which is kind of cool. But it's sort of like already maybe achieved even like as much as it's going to achieve. I mean, it's crazy. It's an ETF. I mean, everyone's buying. Trump knows about it.
Yeah. How did it, what was it like for you in that period of time where you were talking about the block size wars, and you'd had previously looked at Bitcoin from going $10 to $100? What was that like for you? Did you build convictions similar to these other people on CT at the time? Were you, kind of rethinking if it was actually Bitcoin that was going to be this, store of value as it is perceived now? Or were you, happy to just try and buy and experiment with a lot of things at that time?
Yeah, in 2017 when I first got into it, like I bought some Bitcoin, but it was really, it was all about Ethereum. Like I bought heaps of Ethereum, bought a bunch of other shit coins, and made a bunch of money in that run up in the back half of 2017.
Yeah.
But then basically just round tripped all of it, at the start of 2018. And once like all the altcoins had basically like gone to zero, and I guess I was lucky that I joined in mid 2017. So they ran up, and they just basically, I round tripped. So I didn't end up like losing tons of money, but that sort of saved me. And then during the start of 2018 and the end of 2017, Like it sort of felt like, okay, yeah, altcoins are scams. And I like became like a full Bitcoin maxi. I mean, listening to what Bitcoin did.
Yeah, podcasts. Yeah,
For me, following all the Bitcoin guys, and at work, basically just like DCAing into Bitcoin, and I converted all my shitcoins into Bitcoin. And yeah, I mean, it was the only thing you could really believe in. Like it really seemed like all the altcoins were going to zero. Like even Ethereum, on-chain didn't exist at that point.
yeah,
I mean, they were all just seemed like they were going to zero. They all looked like they were massive scams. And it was really, I mean, it was easy to build conviction in Bitcoin and like assume that altcoins were just like going like to absolute zero.
yeah.
And I mean,
Sorry, you go.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, was there literally anything to grasp onto outside of Bitcoin, or was it as like the price of these things coming down, it was just really easy to see that all of these were scams?
I mean, pretty early on, I just like decide like, because you're influenced by everything that's happening on Twitter and, the podcast and stuff. And the discourse is just like, yeah, I mean, the discourse is still very hopeful. Like at the start of 2018 and all through 2018, everyone still believed that Bitcoin would recover and would keep going. And there was a lot of like good things coming in the future, like the Lightning Network would scale Bitcoin. It was still a good store of value. Like a bunch of really good things were happening. And so, along that whole bottom, you're sort of thinking like around 6K, you're like, yeah, we're still good, we'll recover. And then, obviously, like it completely collapsed down to like 3K, 4K. And I remember like thinking, I don't know, like I don't really, it just, everyone on Twitter was just like, I guess we were all just buying it, being like, well, fuck, like who cares? Let's just keep buying it. And if it comes back good, if not, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, no one was doing that with altcoins, but with Bitcoin, there was still a lot of like belief in what it was and what it could be. Like I thought it would have a big impact in the world. Like, and I think a lot of people on Twitter did.
Yeah.
All through that time.
And so how did Ethereum fit into the picture during that period of time in 2018? Because you said that people were buying Bitcoin at the 6K mark, and then even so when it went down to the 3K mark, because they were anticipating like, and it sounds kind of silly, but like they were just anticipating a Lightning upgrade. It's like the hope that they had. Was there anything for Ethereum at that time? Was that even taken seriously at that period of time? What was your read on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of like tuned out a lot of, I just sort of like, you in a massive bear market, it's just going down. So I'm like, I mean, I'm buying some Bitcoin along the way. I'm buying stocks as well, but I'm kind of like tuned out of Ethereum and altcoins. Yeah. Like I really, at that time, thought like alts are just completely dead.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just felt safer, like in the bear market, to be with Bitcoin, because it was sort of the only thing you thought might have a chance.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like I guess risk management, where you're just like, I can either, I mean, it's the only thing that I'm comfortable buying that I think might come back. Whereas the rest of it, I really thought like maybe not.
Yeah. And before the 2018 collapse, when things were going up and it was looking good, were you that sort of person that was comfortable betting the house, and so the bear market for you was a little bit traumatic? Or because you said that you were buying stocks at that time as well, or did you kind of manage your risk and emotions well during that period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, definitely wasn't like all in crypto 2017, because it was also new.
Yeah.
So it was like a part of my portfolio, along with like, I was working in management consulting at the time.
Yeah.
And sort of like in the tech sector. So, I mean, a lot of the like big tech stocks, that was sort of what was interesting at the time. And Bitcoin kind of fit into that framework for me. Like, oh, this is a cool like technology. It was kind of like peer-to-peer money. I mean, because all the biggest things at the time were like, Uber was peer-to-peer transport, Airbnb was peer-to-peer housing. So it was sort of like at that time in tech, peer-to-peer was the exciting thing, like all through the 2010s. And when I sort of came across Bitcoin in 2017, that sort of fit that model for me. So that's why it was sort of exciting at the time.
Yeah.
From an investing perspective.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty interesting.
I think, yeah, I mean, once Bitcoin recovered in 2019 and like pumped all the way back up, then I was sort of like, okay, it's not just going to bleed out and completely die. It's sort of, it was showing like signs of life. And at that point, yeah, I started like focusing way more on it really and trading a lot more Bitcoin and even altcoins. Like things started coming out and making progress. Like I remember like Matic came out, which is now Polygon, and some of these other things like that we sort of had a couple of little mini alt cycles to like start things off. But I regret not spending more time on altcoins during like 2019 and even like early 2020. Like I was so like BTC maxied and so PTSD'd from altcoins that I sort of like missed the idea that Ethereum, like actual really good development was happening on Ethereum, like with DeFi. Like all of those really big guys were in the trenches buying all those dead DeFi things at like $0, you know, like DL, Degen Spartan, like Arthur OX, like all those guys were in those discords buying those things at like fractions like of what they were worth now.
Yeah. Did you ever pivot to like, how was that transition if you did end up making that transition from being a BTC maxi to like an altcoin trader? Because you said that you were trading the altcoins a lot more post the 2019 pump. Were you like more looking at the technicals and just looking for like, oh, here's a good R&R trade? Or were you like, oh no, I'm actually doing research on these now and I'm happy to buy here and start selling it at this sort of point? What was that like?
Yeah, I think at that point it was just really technicals.
Yeah.
Still like wasn't doing a lot of fundamental research, but you know, you'd see altcoins in these periods where they were doing well would have these massive multiples. Like you would get these huge like 20x run-ups, and so it sort of was worth trading them, you know, always with the idea that, you know, any profit I make is going back to Bitcoin, like we're stacking sats here. But yeah, started to trade altcoins more actively for sure.
Yeah. And were you trading around that period of time where COVID happened and I think it was March 2020, had that massive collapse?
Yeah, so I was basically like just all in spot BTC at that point.
Yeah.
And like I hadn't been paying a whole lot of attention. Like I'd spent 4 months working in Tokyo at the start of, or the end of 2019 really into like February of 2020.
Was that management and tech consulting?
Yeah. So it was doing stuff over with the Japanese telco.
No.
And so I hadn't been paying a whole lot of attention. So I'd basically just been like BTC maxi and just enjoying myself in Japan.
Yeah.
Stacking sats. And then, when the COVID crash came, I was just like full like spot BTC.
Yeah.
And as it was all crashing, it was sort of like, it was happening so fast that like you're sort of in shock because it's just like feels like it's just going to zero. And then at the very bottom, there was this sort of like dislocation that happened on BitMEX where like their liquidation engine broke. And you know, it's kind of crazy time. Like in the order books, there was only $20 million worth of bids left in BitMEX as the liquidation engine was trying to sell all the liquidations. And so you're sitting there like, and people were on Twitter and like in chats going like, what's actually happening here? Bitcoin's gone from like 9K to 3.5K in about like 2 days. And now in the BitMEX books, there's 20 million of orders. Like, are we actually just going to go to zero?
Yeah.
And then I don't know, you know, there's that sort of fable or like myth of like Arthur Hayes pulled the plug at BitMEX to like prevent Bitcoin going to zero. And the engine basically broke and BitMEX broke. And what happened was, you know, on a perp exchange, they use like an amalgamation of different spot prices to set their price.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's like it's like fake Bitcoin. It's not, you know, it's not spot. And what had happened was basically the spot price that they had marking their books was trading like, I can't even remember what it was, but possibly like $2,000 higher than what their perp price was showing. So you could put on 100x long and you had like enough room as like a 3x long before you got liquidated. And so you could put on these trades in this like weird few hour window and basically like almost make free money, like which we sort of did at the bottom, but sort of still with the like, you have no idea what's going on, still with the chaos of what's going on.
Yeah.
Still thinking we might go to zero. And then, Kobe put out his buy wall suite and everyone's like, oh my God, if Kobe says we're alive, maybe we're going to survive.
Yeah.
And it all started sort of going back up. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky I wasn't in any like, hurt position that was like liquidated or anything like that. And just like sort of had these like few days where you're riding this spot bag thinking like, okay, I guess like Bitcoin's going to zero and the world's going to zero and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. It sounds like you were like quite aware with what was going on at that time with the exchange. And by the sounds of it too, it did sound like you were like kind of looking at your portfolio in a bit of shock. Did you take advantage of that, what you were saying with the 100x because the perp price was trading lower than the spot? Did you take advantage of that at all, or did you know people that did?
Yeah, no, I took advantage of it. I mean, not on massive size because you just like, send money into BitMEX and it felt like the whole exchange was breaking. So you're sort of like, even if I'm able to trade with this weird like dislocation and sort of make money,
Yep.
Who knows? Like, I mean, it feels like BitMEX might just shut off, like the website might just shut at any second. So you sort of like, well, I'm trading here, but am I actually going to be able to get this money out or these profits out, or what's actually happening here? So it's not like, it's sort of easy to think back in hindsight, oh, there was this big dislocation, the engine broke and you could take advantage. It's sort of like at the time, you just like, it just felt like we were gambling in that like environment, not knowing what was going on. But I guess it worked out in the end.
Yeah, that's incredible actually, because I think around that period of time, from people that I've spoken to, they really kind of felt like it was over as it
definitely
the floor.
Definitely felt like it at the time.
But yeah, that's awesome that you jumped in there. You were like, you know what, I feel like there's something here, and you made it happen, which is cool. I had a question for you around stocks to Bitcoin. My understanding of Bitcoin after the March 2020, it was kind of flat all the way into a little bump in September, a little bit of sell off, and then just, November, December, it just went vertical. What was that like for you? Because I know that stocks kind of started to go higher. Did you feel like that dislocation was going to get adjusted at some point? Did you perceive that Bitcoin would go on its tear that it's did into 2021?
Yeah, I like as that was happening, like, yes, like we'd had that enormous crash like in stocks and crypto, and then the Federal Reserve, and central banks all around the world are basically like dropped interest rates to zero, and then everyone knows like started the money printers and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and stocks started ripping. And yeah, like you said, Bitcoin was pretty flat, like and trading sideways. Like it had recovered, like it had this big V recovery from 3K to like, like you said, like 10K. I think it ranged around 10, 12, 9K for like months.
Yeah, like proper long time. Yeah.
But I was like convinced, like that was like probably the highest conviction I've ever had in crypto or even in stocks. I was like so convinced that Bitcoin would rip as well. I was like, there's no way that all of these stocks rip and people don't go down the risk curve and start grabbing like crazy crypto stuff. I mean, they're printing money. And I just was so sure it was a matter of time until that started happening. So as I basically like sold all of my stocks as they were ripping and just aped more and more into Bitcoin. And like the higher the stocks went, the more excited I got about selling them. And the longer Bitcoin stayed sideways, the more excited I was about buying more Bitcoin because I just sort of knew that it was going to happen. And like once Saylor got on, like once we had Saylor like on these podcasts and he was like spending 3 hours explaining in minute detail how Bitcoin was going to pump. It was like the life raft. And all the TradFi people were sort of like paying attention to Saylor.
Yeah.
I think as well, like Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones at some point both said I have bought Bitcoin. And that's kind of like once those guys, there's probably a lot of like people who manage money around the world who sort of knew that Bitcoin was going to rip as well. But if you do it as part of an organization and then it doesn't rip, you can, I mean, you get fired. You're like, what? I mean, you bought Bitcoin, it didn't rip. What? And why did you do that for?
Yeah.
Whereas once one of those like big guys says they own it, then all those guys who manage money around the world can say, okay, Paul Tudor Jones owns Bitcoin. We need some as part of our portfolio.
Yeah.
So it gives, and then even if it doesn't rip, the guy who's managing the money has an excuse. He's like, well, we bought because Paul Tudor Jones had explained these various, just gives a bit of cover. Like,
Yeah.
so once one of those guys had sort of said that as well, just so many things lined up that I was just like so sure Bitcoin was going to rip as well. So yeah, that was like an amazing time because it's like you have no stress, like that. There is no anxiety because you're just like, I mean, I was just so sure that it was going to go up. So it's just this like, I mean, CL on Twitter says all the time, like he says those things like pre-rich, we're pre-rich. That's like, at that time, that really felt like we were pre-rich, like, especially with that DeFi summer as well in the middle, like, and I mean, got on chain, was trading some of that stuff. Like, I was like, you're so sure that attention to crypto is coming and yeah, Bitcoin would rip. So, I mean, that was like one of my favorite times of trading, I think, like most stress-free because I just like, yeah, knew it was going to go up and you're just waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll come back to the on-chain trading that you did around DeFi, but I think the way that you explained the fact that you were bullish selling stocks that were ripping into BTC, knowing that it was going to catch a pump, is really fresh to me because I think around that time, the theory was that Bitcoin was supposed to be an inflation hedge. At least that was the sort of feed of information that I had coming through. And to hear you kind of go, yeah, it's like this was down the risk asset curve, and it was going to pump, and you were in that mindset of like, you were just like waiting. You just thought that you were getting like cheap Bitcoins before it went on its pump. It's actually really cool to hear in terms of that story. And were you just trading that with spot? Did you try and lever up, or what was your like strategy? Was it just getting all the money into BTC at that time?
Yeah, that was like, yeah, I mean, I'm sort of working, so that was like DCAing spot.
Yeah.
But then I did manage to catch, I think it did that weird little pump in the middle where it like pumped to like 12K or something.
The September one.
It did like that BART or whatever it is. It did like a BART from like 10K to 12 or something.
Yeah.
And then dumped back down to like 10.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure like around that 10 as it went up, I like, yeah, got a pretty decent perp position on and rode that to the all-time high. And then it got a bit funky around the all-time high. So the perp closed, but yeah, definitely caught like pretty good move on perp. And then, yeah, the spot right up. And then once Bitcoin, like once we got to that ATH and Bitcoin started moving up,
yeah,
that's when, yeah, alt started like really like starting to move. And so that was like, I mean, catching some of those old moves on perp was like crazy at the time because they were just, just trending up every day, like just green candles. So that was like crazy conditions.
Yeah. And so because like in the 2017, 2018, you said that there was no on-chain. So just to come back a little bit, when DeFi summer kicked off, what was that like for you to experiment with like using Ethereum, going on chain and buying this sort of stuff? Were you at first like a little bit hesitant and then you dived in, or like what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was super, super exciting. Like, and went in with like a small amount of money. But just like, yeah, down like getting MetaMask and like sending Ethereum to it and having all your, yeah, like making swap. I remember just making a swap on Uniswap.
Yeah.
It was like a crazy feeling, like, oh my God, I'm like, this like, you're like sitting there thinking like, this is the future. Like we are actually using some crazy future tech and it's working. Like I'm swapping, US dollars to Ethereum without logging into an exchange. This is the future. I felt amazing.
Yeah.
And then doing like, I'm not like a gigabrain, like math guy or like programmer or anything. So like, the DeFi farming, like I wasn't very good at that. Like I was like popping it in pool 2 and stuff. There were some like, some crazy ones that were good, but mostly I was like trading what we are doing now with like the Solana trenches. Like, there was like, people were launching their own ERC20s, like their own Ethereum coins, and like rugging them all the time. But you could sit on like, I think it was not even Dex Screener. Like I think we were using like Dex tools at the time.
Yeah.
That was like OG one, and we're sitting there like waiting for new launches and like buying these brand new coins, getting into the Telegram, harassing the dev for them to like lock the liquidity, like all the same things that happen now. We were doing like on Ethereum for like not much fees, because I mean not many people were doing it. So it was like it was fun. It was super fun. I mean, we were in lockdown at the time, so I was just like on voice chats with my friends, and we're like spending our weekends like aping shitcoins on chain on Ethereum, like. But I buying the most random stuff. I remember one just was called like "This is a scam," and like the ticker was "scam," and we were buying it, like just doing all this stupid stuff. Like, and so it's kind of interesting, like when people now are sitting here on their high horse, being like, "Oh, the Solana trenches, like they're ruining crypto or whatever." It's like, I mean, this stuff has been happening since like the dawn of on-chain, like the exact same. So it's sort of like, it's funny to see it all come back.
Yeah. Did you like, because obviously you talked about doing your first swap on Uniswap and it felt like it was the future, and then you pivoted to just buying like all the fun random stuff on Uniswap. I had two questions. Did you have any really cool trades from that DeFi summer that you thought were like worthy of talking about? And the other one was, did you have actual conviction in anything out of that bubble, so to speak, like anything that you thought was worth holding on to, or were you pretty well like managed in terms of risk and emotions, and you were happy to just trade what you were looking at?
Yeah, I think in like the conviction side of things, like even though I'm like using Ethereum and buying and selling different things, there was still like a lot of I think my conviction in Ethereum was definitely went up, and like I sort of like built my initial stack that I'd put on chain on Ethereum.
On Ethereum, yeah.
Up a fair bit in ETH terms. But I was still like pretty PTSD'd from like all of the bear market, and even if you get a good alt pump, it's just going to like go back to zero in a few months anyway. So I was still like not convicted to hold anything like for a long time. But I definitely started building like an Ethereum position around then, like bought Ethereum. I sort of like broke my BTC. It definitely broke my BTC maxi like bias. Like I was like, okay, obviously we are on a chain like Ethereum where like we're actually doing DeFi. Like this is a real thing. The BTC maxis are wrong. We have like real technology here. So that like definitely like broke that BTC maxi sort of thing. I think like the big trade that stands out is YFI.
YFI. Yeah.
Launched by Andre, because it was crazy. I mean, like I think DeFi summer had been like in like pretty full swing by then, and all of like the main things like MakerDAO, SNX, Aave, they'd all like pumped a lot, and the guys who were in super early like Arthur, Excel and stuff, like they'd all just made like shitloads of money. They were on all the podcasts. So thinking like, yeah, this is fun on chain, like I'm trading, like mucking around with these different little things, but I'm like shattered that I missed. I wish I paid more attention like in 2019 when these guys were, because now I've missed those like actual blue chip DeFi tokens. And then, I mean, a few weeks into the whole thing, Andre launched like YFI, like as a fair launch from like basically zero market cap. And came out and everyone's just like, what is this like thing? Like, and released like the white paper, and it was like amazing tech. Like it was awesome. And I think I bought at like $1,000 or something, bought an initial position, and it just immediately in like minutes was up to like $5,000, and I ate like heaps more at 5,000. And I think it ran all the way up to like 100K. I can't even remember. Like it like quickly, like it went like from zero to like at least 80 or 90K in days or weeks. It, like from memory, I think I was just like so euphoric about it. I couldn't believe it. But that's, I mean, and that was sort of like, if you weren't early to all the proper blue chips, that was sort of like the cash up. Like if you got that, you were like, oh, thank God. Like I made some really good money here out of this like big, DeFi summer that we're having.
Yeah. Well, congrats on that trade, because I think the fact that you were at fair launch, and then the fact that it went from $1,000 to 5,000, and then you aped more into it was really cool. Because I think it did go to like a really high price from memory, thinking about it back then. What I wanted to ask just specifically on the DeFi trade, DeFi summer before we move on to like alts in 2021 was, how did you like navigate that relationship between the ETH pairs and the DeFi? Because like the DeFi coins were pumping. Did you ever start to think, because you were rotating profits into ETH, that like ETH was going to win in the long term, or you were more comfortable holding like the DeFi coins? Does that make a bit of sense?
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of stuck with, I was just like a fader of the big DeFi blue chips. Like I just thought I'd like miss them, and so I was never really in this like. Well, I mean, and they had a massive run up. They had like another big run up that I caught on purpose once BTC started moving.
Yeah.
But they were like, a couple of weeks at a time. So I never had these big spot bags of like Aave or Maker or anything like that. Like my spot bags would still just BTC, like even into the end of 2020, which is still just BTC. And then, I had built that Ethereum bag. And sort of like, like the DeFi stuff had run, but you're like, my brain is just like, I'm just faded them. Like I've missed them. But I thought, this is just the start of decentralized finance. And so if I just hold ETH, like ETH is the backbone of the whole thing. Yeah. So, these different like applications might come and go. Aave's been amazing, but there could be new ones in like a few months, but it'll all run on Ethereum. So I was pretty comfortable just like holding Ethereum as like the backbone of the whole thing.
Yeah, nice. So it doesn't sound like you got caught out in that whole Ethereum, up only, and then the DeFi coins bled against it.
So I think in general, like in that whole period, I mean, and even today, like I've always been pretty defensive of like my spot stack. Like, I just get so scared when I don't have like a big stack of BTC or a big stack of like, majors. Yeah. Like, because I just have this PTSD of seeing, and they still do like go down 90% like quickly. I mean, even looking at like AI16Z and stuff, they went down 90% in like 2 weeks or something. So you see this stuff happen and you just like, how can I have my spot portfolio in like, I'll put it like, I have spot bags for sure now, like of different alts, like, decent size, but you're always like, that's the big, I guess the risk management thing of just like always like having that defensive, like big major stack. Cause it's like unlikely that it will rug 90% in a week. Yeah.
I feel like for you, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been in it for so long, like time and time again, you've seen these happen. Essentially, you've seen these cycles where, people believe that it's going to change the world with whatever coin that they're holding. It goes up vertically, and then, in, like you said, in a matter of weeks, it can just bleed out to almost near zero.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically me in like 2017, like, had bought Bitcoin, bought Ethereum, bought CA coin. Yeah. But then pretty quickly, like, found this altcoin called UBIC, UBIQ, which was a fork of Ethereum. And they were talking about being like the enterprise, like, version of Ethereum, where they were going to like reach out to like big organizations and corporates and stuff. And because I was working in a corporate, I was like, that's where the money is. Like, and I basically like, my whole portfolio ended up in this UBQ, and like it went up a fair bit in that July 2017 or whatever, and then went down like 80%. So my whole crypto portfolio just went down 80% because that was basically all in that, and then had that big pump up again at the end, and like I managed to get out of it. But that was like the initial like the lesson to like never like stray too far from the big Bitcoin sort of, or the Ethereums of the world. Yeah, Solana, I guess.
And transitioning that into the altcoin cycle of 2021, you'd obviously had a really good time in DeFi summer. What was the altcoin cycle like for you after Bitcoin, blasted through new all-time highs? Tesla was buying. What was that like for you when you were trading those altcoins?
Yeah, I mean, that was just like, I mean, in hindsight, there was probably like a better rotation of like more of my BTC out into some of like more altcoins in like end of December 2020, start like in January, Feb. Yeah. But I was just so defensive. But caught caught like a lot of those moves on perps because that's sort of, I mean, well, I feel like for perps, for me anyway, like identifying when there is the perfect conditions for perps and then trying to make the most of those conditions while they last is almost, it's like 80% of the battle. Like, and then not trading when those conditions are not there. So it's like with these, like when Bitcoin had run up and all around the world, people are like starting to like get into crypto, you would get on these, get on a perp trade on any like Aave or whatever, like at the end of December when it just had a massive run up, and you could buy anywhere, and the chart would just like go up, like the candles would just go up. There's no one coming to hunt your stock. There's no wicks, like, because it's just pure spot buying. Like there is just a flood of people signing up to exchanges and buying it with like their spot money. So it's just like you see them as well, like. Even you go and look at the chart from like XRP or some of like ADA from November last year. Yeah. Like you could sit down on our Saturday morning in Australia, which is Friday afternoon and evening in US, and you could literally see when the Americans like knocked off work because the chart would just start going like parabolic, like it would just start bruising up, like bleeding straight up because people just like who aren't traders, just buying irregardless of what the price is, and it's just pushing it up. So when conditions are like that, making out with lots of money in perp trades is not that difficult. Like you just identify what like the strongest thing is, buy it on almost whatever leverage, and ride it up, and then get a decent chunk. Like, and every day you sort of do that. You sit down, look at what's pumping, buy it, sell like a few hours later for way higher, without ever really, getting tested. Like you're just in profit straight away. So, I mean, that period, especially that like January 2021, Feb 2021, even March, like it was sort of like that. Like everything had a rotation, like there was GameFi. So the perp side of things was just amazing at that time.
Yeah. I had two questions. So you said perfect conditions for perps. I think myself and many listeners out there are probably very keen to hear what you define and describe as perfect conditions to trade perps. I know you talked on the fact that people were just buying like large cap altcoins and they were only ever bleeding up, so maybe that was that and the question's relevant. But the other one I had was how do you deal with like trading fatigue? Because I feel like if you've participated in DeFi summer, you participated in the March 2020 collapse for BTC, and then you were trading alts. Like that's a lot of different scenarios that are occurring, and to be across all of that and to get in there and make the most of it, I feel like takes a lot out of someone. So yeah, have you ever experienced like trading fatigue?
Yeah, I think like on like the idea of, I guess, like flipping around, doing different things, like so you sort of hear a lot people say you should stick to your area. Like if you're a perp trader, you should just trade perps, or if your strength is on chain, you should just trade on chain. Like, I mean, maybe that's true for some people, but I feel like it's almost like in crypto there's two different games really, like two different sectors. Like there's obviously like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is its own thing, it's doing its own thing, and then the second sector is sort of just like speculative games and identifying like what is hot and what has the attention at any given time. So like in DeFi summer, all the attention is on chain. It's on all the DeFi stuff. Yeah, that's where like all the new money is going into, and you just want to, like in my head, you want to position yourself where the new money is entering the system, because it's like that's where the dumb money is, right? That's where it's easiest. Like you're sitting down at the poker table at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night with a bunch of drunk people. It's like you want to identify like the best table to sit at any given point in time in crypto. And sometimes that is on chain. So like DeFi summer, that's what, all the new money was coming in there. Yeah. And then, in that January 2021, Feb 2021, it was just these like centralized exchange alts, sex alts. Yeah. Because people like the less sophisticated retail were showing up, and like Binance had and Coinbase as well, I think like they were having to cap out new user registrations because there was that many new people coming in and buying crypto. And so you're sort of like positioning yourself to take advantage of that new money coming in.
Yeah.
And it can happen, there's on-chain like DeFi Summer, there's sometimes perps, it's happening. And like, when I say, I guess like alt perps and just like centralized exchange alts is the same sort of thing, I guess. Like you just take advantage of it via perps.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's things like, it was the ICOs or, in other times it's been NFTs. That's where all the attention is. And when NFTs are going crazy, like, that's where you need to position yourself. And so I feel like, like trying to just identify the best place to put your attention at any given point in crypto and where the newest like money is coming in. That's sort of where you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So did you ever have to balance the idea of having long-term conviction in things, or were you very much okay with like, if it's hot right now, I'm going to divert all my attention and like capital here, continuously take profits, apply risk management practices. And then once that had run, you were happy to be either stabled up or in BTC waiting for the next opportunity. Is that what you were kind of doing?
Yeah, I think at that time, like I thought, so that Tesla had bought Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It definitely all felt frothy. So I was like very wary. But I was still taking profits and putting it into Bitcoin. I definitely wasn't buying anything at that point in time, thinking like, I'm going to hold this for ages. It was mostly just perp trades, where I'm like with the intention of rotating the profit back into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I feel like I'm pretty good at identifying when it's time to pull the pin as well and like sell everything to stables. Like, so I remember we'd sort of it had just been obviously insane. Like it was so crazy, like through March and even into April. Bitcoin like had put in those like sort of 3 pushes at the top and hadn't been able to get through, and then had a big dump and put in that sort of like little right shoulder in like the start of April. When it was. And I was super bearish at that point. I was like, I'd sort of pulled everything back into Bitcoin, but I was still, obviously everyone is like, you're so euphoric, you're so full of adrenaline and dopamine, you've been making money.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of like failing or selling, it's like hard. It's like it's honestly really difficult. But I feel like I woke up one morning and like Elon had said that they were selling, like Tesla was selling Bitcoin because it didn't fit the like environmental whatever of Tesla. I can't even remember what it was, but it was basically the headline, like Elon is selling, and he'd just been on Saturday Night Live as well with Doge, which was like insane. And I'd made a lot of money shorting Doge like during that thing, like which is good. But I woke up, saw that they were selling Tesla, and I was like, this is it. And just I like sold everything. I sold everything to stables, sold Bitcoin to stables.
Wow.
I'm a big fan of that movie, Margin Call. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times. Yeah.
And I feel like, I'd like held things in the past like too long and like just done stupid stuff. And I saw that movie, and there's that quote where, the main hedge fund guy is sort of talking about that we need to start selling everything. And Kevin Spacey's like, what are we panicking? Are you panicking? And he goes like, if you're the first one out the door, that's not panicking. And I was like, that's so boss. Like, and I'd always remembered that. And then they're in the meeting and the guy's like giving the explanation for why it's sort of wrapping up. And the big hedge fund guy's like, okay, well, sell it all. And they're just like, what do you mean sell it all? It's like, sell everything. And there's that massive montage of them just like, the guys on the trading floor just like selling everything they own at any price basically throughout the whole day. And I just like, anytime like when I saw that Elon tweet, I was like, okay, like you're the first one out the door, stop panicking, let's go. And just like channel this like selling vibe. And just like, just go like psycho mode and just like sell everything I own. And sort of like, manage to avoid that like enormous enormous crash. I bought back way too early, which is a different skill entirely. But I definitely like, feel like I feel like I'm pretty good at like understanding when the music's about to stop and then going like switching gears really quickly from like hyper bullish to just like max bearish, like, and just selling everything.
Yeah. I'd say that's a pretty well like timed skill, man, because in April, I still think a lot of people were probably riding the euphoria and to wake up one morning and then just max sell everything. It must have been like a little bit like because I think those candles from memory were like incredibly harsh all the way down to I think it was like high 20s K. Did you get like double euphoria in the sense that you like sold, had lots of profit, and then you're like watching the markets tank and you're like, oh my God, I've killed it twice, I've killed it on the way up and on the way down. And then you said that it's a different skill entirely when you bought back too early. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that can be a problem as well with like trading and your own like psychology. Like,
yeah,
when you've had a period of like doing really well, like you'd asked if I, got like trading fatigue or burned out and stuff like that. Like at that time, like absolutely not. Like every day I was so excited to wake up, like, because I had just been like it was at that time, it was really easy to make money. So I'd been making like really good money almost every single day, had hardly been losing. Like when you're like making money, like just like every day, you're not really fatigued. Like, there's no real like stress. But yeah, I mean, when I sold, and so I'd like felt amazing that I'd like made really good money in bullish conditions. I was right about Bitcoin. It went up, made some really good perp trades on alts.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God. And I've been able to sell at like a really good time as well. Like I'm a genius. Like this is unbelievable. And as well in March, I'd actually quit my job to do it full time. It had been going well. And so I was like, amazing. I quit my job, made money. Like I sold at a good time. This is incredible. Like, how good is this?
Yeah.
But then, I remember like walking away. I went for a swim down at the beach, clear my head, and like came back. Like the problem is that like when you quit your job to do it full time, it's like especially after a period of good conditions, you're like addicted to the feeling of like making money and just like doing everything, like making good decisions and being successful.
Yeah.
And so, even though I've sold, I'm still full of like adrenaline, still full of like dopamine.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, so you go to the beach, like I have a swim, I come back to the house, and you're almost like, you have nothing to do. So your body goes from like this feeling, and because I didn't want to short or anything, I just felt like I needed to get into stables and then see once the dust settled what was what.
Yeah.
But the problem is like, you go from like full of dopamine, full of adrenaline, making lots of decisions every day, taking lots of action every day. So your day's full, to just like, I all of a sudden have nothing to do. And the thing that was giving me dopamine, now I can't get anymore. And I'm locked in this, I've at home with this computer that I've been like sitting on making money with. And so you just sort of like sit down in front of the computer, tinkering around, like looking at different charts. You're thinking, and you've been successful so far. So you're like, I think this is like, we've capitulated enough here. Like we're getting closer to the lows. Like this is insane. Like people are melting down on Twitter. This is crazy. Like I've never seen the timeline so like stressed, like open interest is falling off a cliff. Like this is crazy. Like how good is this? I'm just going to buy the bottom and just like catch the next leg.
Yeah.
I'm killing it.
Yeah.
And just bought like bought a bunch of Ethereum like so early, like, and then just copped like, I don't even know what it was, like 30 or 40% of the rest of the move down to the bottom. It was fine. Just thinking like, and then you beat yourself up. You're like, are you serious? Like you did everything right. Like you made money over the last like few months. You like sold at the perfect time.
Yeah.
And then all you had to do was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, fucked it up. Like you fucked up the do nothing part. How did you that up?
Yeah.
And you just, and so that's like, I feel like that's a constant thing, like with doing it full time, is trying to like understanding your own tendencies and your own, things that can happen and things that can go wrong. Like, especially after you feel like you've sold the top, I mean, that was that was an example of things going wrong, even when I'd sold and price went lower than when I had sold. But that's like, the ideal thing. And then there's other times where you sell everything thinking you're like fire sailing in margin call,
Yeah.
and price goes up again, and you're like, fucking hell. And so there's just so many different ways that you can like muck things up and things can go wrong. And, a lot of the time there are the perfect times to just like leave the desk and try to not be in your house at all, because you're just like, your brain can find ways for you to stuff things up when like your emotional brain can find ways for you to stuff things up when like your analytical brain, knows what you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those listening now, just before the call, the beach that Zen was swimming at was out the front of his $14 million property in Saint-Tropez. So just as a bit of context to know who you guys are dealing with. But I actually think the emotions that you described when you killed it on the way up in 2021 and then sold in April before the dump, and then you looked at the timeline, I had nuked, and you're like, guys, this is easy. Like, why are you guys all upset? All you had to do is like literally, trade this successfully. And then the fact that you bought and then it proceeded to bleed, I think it was like a month, right? It bled for
crazy. It went straight down.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, okay, I've clearly bought too early, but at least I bought already at a massive discount, so we'll get a bounce soon and I can just like get back out again. And then just the bounce like never came. It just went straight down.
Yeah. And I remember people talking about that as well. They were like, yeah, usually like there should be a bounce, but this is like muted and like bleeding to the downside. So I feel like that would have been a slap in the face a little bit for you, because you were like riding this like high achievement, like you just quit your job, you're killing it in the markets, and you were ready, you're ready to deploy the capital and capture the upside. And then it was like, nope, we're going to slide it down there. But what did you do to readjust right before the September pump and like the back end of 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up selling like a fair bit because it was just like chopped for however, it was like 3 months or something, just chopped a lot. And I managed to sell like a fair bit just that on one of the like mini pumps, I guess. I sold at the top of the range somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when I remember went and did like Melbourne had just got out of COVID lockdown, and I went to visit my friends up in Darwin and like do a road trip around Northern Australia and just clear my head.
Yeah.
And honestly, at that point, like I kind of felt like it was over. Like it's sort of hard to like imagine now, because the second half of 2021 was so crazy bullish. Like it was unbelievable money making conditions. But I thought at that time, especially because I quit my job, I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, what? Of course, I can't like undo this full time. Like, it never works out. Like, what am I going to do? And I spent time like thinking about like, am I going to go back to work? I had a couple of like job offers anyway, so I was like weighing it up.
Yeah.
But then went to NT, like traveled around a bit and just like cleared my head and just I sort of felt way better about it, and was like, no, look, you were able to like, in the 6 months leading up to that mistake, it'd have been like great. You'd been making really good money. And I mean, you're in a pretty good financial position anyway, just to like ride it out and see what happens. So, I remember I got back from NT, and then like in a few days after getting back, like I remember sitting there watching the chart bleeding out, and I'm in stables thinking like, at least, I mean, I've still done really well. Like, this is still okay, even though like I made that massive mistake at the end.
Yeah.
And then it was like full on falling off a cliff, and then it just price stopped going down for a while, like for a few hours, I remember. And then Sam Trabucco from FTX put out this tweet. I can't even remember what it said now, but he basically just said like, we've bought a shitload of Bitcoin. And then I like just ate full back into Bitcoin, like pretty close to that low. And it pretty quickly like went back up. I don't know, like it was just lucky timing that I was back on screen and I was sitting on the desk when that was happening. And I was like, I think having the time off, like it was like 6 weeks or something. It was enough to just like refresh my brain. I mean, it was sort of like what you were talking about before. Like I was definitely burned out, especially after like, making that big mistake. But I came back with fresh eyes and was like happy to just be sitting on the computer, seeing what price was doing with like no real like desire or bias either way. And then so when that, that moment came, I was sort of ready to just take action, which is kind of lucky. Like no apps or anything, but just spot back into Bitcoin. And then we had that big second half of 2021.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like that is like, surely you look back on that moment and think that is like crazy that you decided to get out of the market, go on that holiday, in NT, and then you come back and then it's like perfect timing to then like switch on and then away you go.
Lucky. Yeah, I mean, definitely a few like lucky moments along the way.
Yeah. I was going to ask how NFTs fit into that cycle. Were you trading them much? Did you have an interest in them at all? What was that like?
Yeah, so like the early part of NFTs, I just completely missed, like at the front half of 2021. Like obviously missed like punks, Bored Apes, like the masks, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then once like I was back in that Bitcoin trade and markets started pumping again. NFTs were the hot thing from like July, August, September through there. So definitely like got involved a bit. Was like I managed to catch like I feel like there was a period where people were like minting the art block stuff and then selling them for just like 20x every single day. Like unfortunately I like missed that phase. But I caught a few different things. Like I got a whole bunch of lazy lions like really cheap and they went up a lot, sold them. Like some other like Rumble Kongs. I think they were called Rumble Kongs.
Were they the
like money there? The kind of there was like these basketball like apes.
Yeah.
They're like so irrelevant now. But I honestly never really made like big money in NFTs. It was a lot of like almost could have, would have, should have. The one thing in NFT, or there's like actually kind of two like things that were funny in NFTs. There was like a big phase in the NFT time about like archaeology, like or old, like trying to find the oldest NFTs.
Yeah.
So I think Leonidas was putting together this massive like history of like NFTs, so like 2017 timeline, and everyone thought because there's only so many of those ones that have the provenance, you can't get more of them. There's only this many from 2017, this many from 2018. And at some point, I can't remember what it was, but someone found these old castles called Ether Realms. It was like someone in 2017 had tried to make this NFT game called Ether Realms. It's kind of like, it was like a browser-based strategy game, I think.
Yeah.
And they'd figured out that the castles hadn't minted out yet. And so we like got into this like Telegram chat and people were like figuring out how to mint them and what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was just after the rocks had gone up and there were like, 100 rocks and they'd gone to like, 6 figures at that point.
Yeah.
What they're worth, $500,000 or something. And we found out that there was only 100 of these castles as well. So we were like, oh my God, this is like the next Ether Rock maybe. And so we were able to mint them and we were minting them at like I can't remember what it was, like 0.01 ETH or maybe even less than 0.01 ETH. And like there was a whole bunch of people like just spam minting them. It was like a race to see, like to try and mint as many as you could before they got minted out.
Wow.
In like a 1 hour period. Basically everyone's just like spamming. Managed to get like a whole bunch of them. And then pretty soon on secondary, like within hours of that on OpenSea, they were selling for like 5,000 USD or something.
Oh my God.
Whatever it was, like 2 or 3 ETH. But they eventually at one point went up to like 30K USD. And so we had bought them for literally nothing and just sold them all the way up, like just constantly selling on OpenSea, which is insane. Like probably the biggest multiple I've ever had on a trade was that.
How did you come across it?
I can't even remember. I can't even remember if I found it on Twitter or someone in a TG chat. Yeah, I can't remember now.
Dude,
the other NFT thing that was kind of funny was like Gary V. He had that like Wave 1.
Yes. What did he call it? The V Friends thing.
V Friends. And he was like big, like he was probably like the leading KOL of like NFTs at some point. Like he was massive.
Yeah.
I remember I was like shattered that I'd like baited his initial ones. So I sort of like knew of him and I feel like I had the chance to like get involved in his one. I don't know him personally, but just like sort of saw him getting into it and was like, oh, they'll probably do well. For some reason, faded. But he launched a second collection where anyone who bought his book would basically get an NFT.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like on the pre-order of his books, I bought like 100 of his books.
No. What?
So all these books like arrive at my apartment at this time, and my partner at the time was like, "What the fuck? Why are there 100 books? And there's all these boxes filling up our apartment?" And I'm like, "Trust me, like it's gonna work. We have to just have like you could buy." So the book costs like $20 or something, right? I don't know what it costs. Like, and I'm like, I'm sure the NFT will sell for more than $20. Like, I would have bought more, but I don't even know. Like, it seems so silly and crazy. I was like, I don't even know where I'm going to put the books. Like, in hindsight, I should have bought way more. Just 100, but 100 already seems so stupid. But anyway, yeah. So I had all the books, and then the NFTs came out. I ended up selling the NFTs for like, I don't even know, like $200 per pop or something.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, it wasn't like an enormous amount of money, but it like definitely made a profit of them. But I guess 10x on all the.
Dude.
It was just, and then I was stuck with all these books. Like, I think I've got like 3 of them still sitting around just as like mementos, and then I like donated the rest to Savers, like an op shop. I didn't want that. I would 90 something of the same Gary Vee book.
Yeah, the salvos are going to open up a box and just see like all of the same book and be like, "What the hell is this?" That is such a creative trade, though. I actually think that is hilarious. Like, even to the point where your partner's like, "What are you doing? Like, what is this?" Right? Like, this is crazy that you've bought like 100 books to then try and get the NFT to then sell them, but it ended up working, right? Like, you got the profit. You made a mint.
Point, I knew we were in a bubble. At that point, we're in a bubble.
Dude, that's awesome. I had a question, and I know you've talked about a lot of really, really decent trades and like across the board too, right? From DeFi Summer to the Gary Vee with the books, as well as like perp trades and stuff. Were there any good trades that you thought that you took that defined where you are today, and any sort of like risk management practices that you implement now that you've learned as well?
Yeah, I think like over time, I guess, I mean, from a risk management perspective, and I guess like the biggest and best trades, it's just been for most of my time denominating in Bitcoin, and buying Bitcoin at the lows in 2022 after FTX collapsed, like full ported basically, and then like rode that up was pretty amazing. But I mean, apart from like the Bitcoin stuff, the best trades I've ever had were like any of the spot or on-chain stuff that is like those sort of brand new or unique kind of things, like the hot new thing. I think like Jazz or Isabel on Twitter talks about this, where it's something that's like brand new, no one's really like sure what it is, and you're early to it. Those have always like been the best for me. Like, so for example, I bought like Axie at, I think it was 10 cents shortly after Binance listing.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like someone spoke about it on Twitter that there was a game that you could play, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm interested in like trying to figure out, if there's a blockchain game, like what's going on with it? Is this like a Fugazi? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I went on like DApp Radar and like checked, and it had this like crazy parabolic user growth, like Axie. I was like, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I bought a bunch at 10 cents because it was like I'd never seen a blockchain game before.
Yeah.
And it ended up, I mean, running to like $160, and I obviously sold like way earlier than that. So I didn't make like crazy, like life-changing money on it, but that was a pretty good trade.
Yeah.
Or like Audi as well. Like at the start of 2023, when Ordinals first came out, that was another one that sort of like triggered my radar of like a brand new thing that no one had ever sort of seen before. So I ended up like managing to like get the applicable Bitcoin wallet, sending Bitcoin there, and ended up buying Audi at around $1 or like $2 before it was like on any exchange or anything like that. And then obviously that once it got listed had a massive run up. I think it like peaked out at $80 again. Didn't ride it all the way to 80, but had a pretty good trade on it.
Yeah.
Rollbit as well was like that was probably like my favorite trade or like happiest I've ever been in a trade, maybe, like, because it came so soon after the FTX collapse. Like FTX collapsed and like I lost a bunch of money in it.
Yeah.
I managed to buy the bottom of that collapse, but it was sort of at the end of the bear market. I'd like lost a fair bit of money in the bear market and then lost a bunch on FTX. So, I mean, it bought the bottom of Bitcoin and it sort of like recovered in that December, January period. But then managed to buy like a fair bit of size on Rollbit really, really early.
Yeah.
Back when it wasn't even really trading on like, it was on this like janky exchange on chain on Solana that like had an order book and stuff. I don't even know what it was, but it was so hard to buy.
Yeah.
I managed to buy like a bunch of that and wrote it up huge. And I was sort of like, I was almost like basically back close to portfolio all-time high, like pretty soon after buying that, which was like an amazing feeling because you sort of like, it had just gone from like, oh my God, crypto's over, FTX collapsed. Like what is going on here? The whole thing's over. It's just like, okay, I managed to like, it seems like I've bought a pretty good price of Bitcoin. And now this Rollbit thing, I'm like up enormously on, like, we're back. So that one sort of like, felt like it was like a lifesaver. I was like, oh my God, like you saved my life, Rollbit. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Dude, that's actually insane that like, because we'll talk about this cycle and things like the Audi trade, but on the collapse of FTX, like for you to probably, lose a fair chunk on FTX and then buy the bottom of BTC, because if people actually go to your profile, and if you're listening to this in the recording on YouTube, if you go to Zen's profile, which is in the description, you'll see that he's actually got a thread about literally at the lows of the FTX collapse of it being like a good opportunity to buy. But I think like the fact that you had that appetite to then go and buy Rollbit of all things on Solana, like an actual gambling site after the speculative exchange FTX collapse, I think that's like peak reversion behavior, you know what I mean? And I think that the fact that it paid off is like really great, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess you're sort of like, you in the state of mind to be able to do that. Like because I think Bitcoin had pumped back above that like 20K level by then. So you sort of like, I'm pretty euphoric. Oh, I bought the bottom. Like we're all good. Like Bitcoin's going back up. Yeah. And so you're in the state of mind of like, you're in a bullish state of mind, you're like, what's looking for the, like, what's happening? Like looking for something to buy. And I think like Alts had a pretty good pump as well. Like that late December 22 into Jan, like there was a pretty big good recovery on everything. So you're sort of back into that headspace of just like looking for the next thing to buy.
Yeah.
Be able to get in again. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, did any other altcoins that were beaten down from the highs of the 2021 cycle, did they not really appeal to you, or were you happy to kind of go blank slate, I'm just going to buy BTC and I'm just going to start looking for anything that kind of interests me?
I'd actually bought Sol as well, because I'd played with Sol a fair bit in 2020, like even in like January, Feb 2021, I was like aware of Sol and had even used it. And like, I just thought, Sam Bankman-Fried's with Sol, and you had that tweet, we'll buy whatever I'll buy all the Sol you have at $3 or fuck off or something. So I'd made okay money on Sol throughout 2021.
Yeah.
And after it collapsed, I sort of thought, and like GCR as well said he'd bought Sol, and that sort of like helped my conviction. So I think I bought Sol at a pretty good price as well at the lows. Yeah. But then it kept bleeding down. Like I think I bought Sol at like $16 at the lows, but then it kept bleeding for ages. Yeah. And at some point I capitulated. I was like, what am I doing? Like, get back into Bitcoin, and like got back into Bitcoin. Like, yeah. But nothing else. In my headspace was just like, okay, we're in the bear market, you know, it's crazy. We've got to stick with Bitcoin like I'd done in the past, like in 2022 and like 2018, you know, stick with Bitcoin when
Bitcoin.
terrible, like stay safe. But then, yeah, I mean, always, I guess I just saw someone mention that, like, yeah, Rollbit on Twitter, and it just seemed like such a crazy good risk reward opportunity that, like, yeah, I was like, okay, I mean, this looks like incredible, so I'm just going to try this. I think I bought like a little bit just to see how I felt, and then got more and more convicted. And it was like Gainsey was like, there's a bunch of big accounts, big gambling accounts that were all like affiliated with it, like Gainsey at the time, Keyboard Monkey. And they were all actually using the platform and gambling. And because crypto had been so dead, like sports betting kind of was like the predominant topic of conversation on Twitter at the time.
Yeah.
And so you sort of see them all using this platform, and no one even knew it had a token.
Yeah.
And so then I sort of already had top of mind that people are using Rollbit. And then someone had mentioned like that they actually had this token that had been fully airdropped to users and was trading on some janky little exchange. I was like, oh, this could be actually like huge. Like this is a great opportunity. But the risk reward just seemed perfect. So yeah, like I think that's the thing as well. Like with these trades, like with like Rollbit, with Audi, you know, there's probably like same thing with like Goat and like AI16Z and some of these other ones. Like with a lot of this stuff, like you'll see it first. I mean, I know I will, and your initial reaction is just to fade.
Yeah.
I just like a natural like want to fade, like because there's like mental effort in spending time like looking deeper into it, because obviously it's like brand new and no one's talking about it. So your human brain's like, well, no one in the herd that I'm in, the tribe I'm in, is talking about it. So, you know, it can't be that important, which is like the biggest opportunity is in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Like your human tendency is to like not bother because no one else is talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's also like, you know, your brain also thinks, oh, it's hard to buy. I can't be bothered figuring that out. Who cares? Like, this is just like going to be exciting for 5 minutes, then fade. Like, you know, who cares? You just want to fade so badly. And so like, I think that I still do now, like the exact same psychology happens now. So the thing that I try and do, and what I did with Rollbit and same with Audi as well, is anytime I see anything like slightly unique or new, or, you know, that's hard to buy, no one's talking about yet, I'll force myself to just go and buy a tiny bit of it. Like just a small, tiny position. And almost 100% of the time, once I've done that, then it's sort of like you've broken the inertia and then you'll do stuff. You'll like, now you own a little bit, you'll research because you're invested.
Yeah.
And then it's almost, pretty quickly after, like once you've like got that little position, you've gone through all the hassle of like getting to the, you know, the hard to buy place, wherever that is.
Yeah.
So the hard work done, then you're like, okay, well, now I own a little bit. Now I've researched a little bit more. This actually is an amazing opportunity, and I need to go harder. And like, let's go. And then you sort of go harder. So, it usually works like that. You just need something to break that like human desire to do nothing, to be lazy, I guess. Like, and it works the other way as well. Like, you know, once I've been in a big position for a while, like Rollbit, you know, right up, and I definitely sold this one too late, so I didn't follow my own advice here. But you've been so comfy in this trade for so long, right? Like, I mean, it's a bit different now with the Sol on-chain trenches. Like a pump lasts like 4 hours, but you know, like Rollbit was pumping for like 2 months straight or 3 months straight. I don't even know. Yeah. So you're so comfy, and like every day you wake up, you check the price of CoinGecko on your phone, and it's gone up. You're like, yes, how good is this? Like, yeah, can't go down. I was making money. It's such a good feeling. I'm so comfy. Feel so good in this position.
Yeah.
That the idea of changing the state of things by selling is like your brain doesn't want to do it. It's like so against that idea, and like ignores any like analytical or rational desire to sell any of it. Yeah. And so what I've, you know, even though your rational brain might be like, you know, the founders of pushing this, like, which the founders have been pushing it really hard for the past 4 months, doing all this work, and they're releasing this like RuneScape Jewel Arena, and I don't know, we're hitting these like key resistance points, and all of Twitter's talking about it. Everyone's saying that the comfiest hold for the next 12 months, which is like the kiss of death. If someone says on Twitter, it's consensus that if everyone on Twitter is consensus that this is the thing to hold for the following year, it's like the Pico top.
Yeah.
But everyone was saying that about Rollbit. What you need to do to like change your date or break the inertia is like sell a little bit.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a tiny bit, even if you've been taking profit on the way up, like if it really is time to fully pull the pin on the whole position, just get on the computer and like sell a little bit and see how it feels.
Yeah.
And then even just that act of like selling, it like breaks that inertia. And then you're like, well, I sold a little bit. Should I sell more? And like, and you start looking for reasons to sell more. And then once you're in the mode of selling, you're like, yeah, of course I need to sell more. Like, look at all this signals. Like, of course. And it's just like getting that little, like breaking that human desire to do nothing or stay in the comfy like position, whether it's like, you know, not buying something that's brand new or like not selling something that's like consensus, the greatest thing ever on Twitter, is like really hard to do. So trying to find ways to like, get moving by selling or buying a tiny bit at a time. Is good.
I think that's a really good point that you touched on, which was like learning to train your brain to not fade things when they're interesting, and at least just buying a tiny bit of something so you can kind of break that inertia to get yourself going. That's probably, because I think even myself, like there's been plenty of times where something will pop up, like what's a classic one? AI16Z, and seeing that and kind of going, like my brain was just like, this isn't it. And it's just like, well, maybe if I had kind of put in place, you know, this ability to buy a little bit, I would have been able to, you know, have a bit more interest, be a bit more open-minded to how high and far that could go. But I think it's not the first time that I've heard that on the downside as well. Once you're in a winning position, is to just like continuously kind of take profits until you can kind of feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So yeah, I think that's really good advice that you touched on there, Zen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like, that had been my like, like you said, when I was like thinking about, this podcast and sort of thinking about the trades I've made the most money, like those ones stand out as like individual big, like multi X's with decent buys and stuff. On the like the perp side of things, it's like, just a whole bunch of different trades over, it's like a period of time. Like, you know, you made a lot of money over a whole, you know, thousands of different trades in like a 2-month period at a time. So it's sort of like a bit different with perp because for me, they're much shorter. Or like, it's much more, I guess, based on like momentum and technicals and stuff like that. But I think an interesting, like after having just spoken about all the like, you know, some of the best trades I've made have been on like the brand new or unique things in crypto. That was like, I ended up missing like almost all of it last year. There was almost like my, I think last year I probably put down as one of my worst years in crypto, really.
Really?
Yeah, I think because we'd had that crazy run from obviously like October 2023 when Bitcoin first started, like got the ETF like discussion going.
Yes.
Through to March 2024. That had been like an amazing period, and like an amazing period for me on perps. Like altcoins have been ripping, like stuff like Inge, like I don't even know what and it went like 20x more maybe. Like
I think it was like 40 from memory. It went from like single digits to like $40 or something, or even higher or something. Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean, TR did like 10x something. Like they like some of the like, so these like big, pretty liquid alts like had done like massive multiples. Like I'd made really good money on perps. And because I was like going so well on perps through that period, I had pretty well ignored like spot or on chain. And so like I'd missed whiff, missed some of these other things. And because I'd like missed that, I hadn't built the muscle memory or the of trading on chain basically. Like just been so focused on perps. And then once we got into like Q2, Q3 of 2024, I was still just like on perps. Like I really like hadn't adjusted. Like because Bitcoin was just tripping me out so much. Like it was just in this crazy range that like just like wrecked me pretty much. Like just was like losing money the whole time. And then once we like got into that September period where like we'd had that massive nuke in August, and then we were sort of recovering, making it back up, I was still pretty focused on chain, and then pretty focused on like spot Bitcoin as well. And like leading into the election with Trump, and unsure what was going on with that whole thing, like what was going to happen if Kamala won. But I had, because I was so focused on perps, and even when we broke out, like once Trump won, I was still pretty focused on perps, and I did well in that November period, trading the dinos like XRP and ADA and stuff. I had a really good period there.
Nice.
But through that whole year, I had basically just all my attention had been on either like my bigger spot positions like Bitcoin and stuff, or perps. And I had ignored like I just explained some of my best trades are like those sort of on-chain new spot, like unique sort of things. I'd sort of like ignored all of those through that period, when last year turns out to be one of the best on-chain years, I mean, ever. Like on-chain, like I feel like all the guys who've made the most money were on-chain Solana all last year. And I missed all of it. Like I missed Moodang, I missed Peanut, I missed Goat, like missed Farcoin. Like I managed to catch like a tiny little bit of like AIXVT, and like I bought Game, which is like affiliated with Virtuals. But like all of that stuff is in my wheelhouse. Like if I was focused on looking for like hot new things or unique new things, all of those are like so fit the criteria, especially like Goat. Goat was a classic one. And then the AI stuff like AI16Z and some of those ones, and Virtual even. And I think like the lesson there is like, you know, I hadn't lost too much money through the whole year, just like stuffing around on perps, just getting chopped up really, like nothing catastrophic. But what I had lost was the opportunity cost of my attention. Like I should have been paying attention on chain, looking for the hot new things like I had in the past. But because I was spending my time and energy and attention on perp, I basically missed all of that. And I think that was like a huge lesson for me, like coming out of last year, in really being cognizant of how you're spending your attention in crypto. Because you can't split it. You know, I'm just a one-man person. I'm not running like a prop desk with a bunch of different analysts, like all looking at stuff at once. It's just me. And so, you know, if I'm spending all my time and energy on perp, I'm missing out on chain. And it sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier about identifying where the best place to be spending your time and energy in crypto, identifying where the new flows are coming from, where the new attention is. Like with DeFi Summer, then it was the perp stuff, started 21. I had like not done that. I had like forgotten those rules and strayed away from it. And it ended up having me like miss out on a whole bunch of that stuff. So that was like, a really big lesson sort of when I sat down at the end of the year and like had to think about what I had done wrong and mistakes. I was like, oh my God, like I full on missed out like on so much of this stuff. Like, how have I done this? Like, what a mistake.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So did you feel like, as a comparison for this cycle that we're currently in versus last cycle, that there is just so much more to pay attention to, and that's why you kind of hyper-focused on perps more so than the soul on chain?
I think so. I think as well, just because it had such a successful perp period in like the end of 23, start of 24, your brain's just so like chasing that dopamine of like, oh, we were so successful doing that. Like I for some reason, I don't even really know why. Like I can't even get back to how I was thinking then. Like I do a lot of journaling, like, you know, every week about trading and stuff. But even going back through the journals, I can't really pick out like why I never shifted my focus like on chain or anything and stuck with the perps. But yeah, I mean, it has been an interesting cycle. Like, I mean, it's just, that on-chain Solana stuff, like it really has just kept going. It's almost like that is the altcoin game now. Solana on-chain, and any other altcoin game that we were thinking about in the past is sort of like almost dead for now. I don't know.
Well, I suppose it works all right though if you're still, you know, from the previous cycles and you know, previous trading history, if you did keep that strategy of, you know, rotating into big spot bags like BTC and perhaps Sol, you would have been pretty all right with that. But I reckon if there were people out there that were like all in different alts and things like that, or even Ethereum, it would have been pretty tough.
Yeah, pretty glad that I wasn't like an Ethereum maxi this time around. I was sort of stuck with Bitcoin really. I mean, that to me was kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've never been that. I've always just been back to my roots of sort of still like being a bit of a Bitcoin maxi. I've always like preferred Bitcoin. Like, I guess because I was never like not as like coder, or like I can't read like code, so I can't read smart contracts, all this sort of stuff. So I was never in like the weeds, and I've never like been on a development team, or like, you know, done venture capital, or like where you're involved with all the like Ethereum teams building and stuff. So I've always just, I don't know, yeah, just when the ETFs came out and Bitcoin had massive ETF flows, I was like, well, I mean, pretty clear these are just going to keep going, so why go with anything else?
Yeah, I think that's a great trade in itself. Like, I think I don't think people really foresaw how much Bitcoin ended up being such a stronger performer against Ethereum. And so I think the fact that you kind of did that reset, bought Bitcoin, and you were like satiated enough with that, you didn't really need to head back over to Ethereum to kind of to park your capital there. I think that's a great trade, considering how bad ETH BTC has sort of ended up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty ruthless as well. Like, yeah, I mean, you sort of see people still like on Twitter, every time ETH pumps, people are like pumped that, you know, I've been holding ETH so long. Like, I don't know how you've been holding ETH so like, how is anyone still holding ETH? I mean, I guess by this point, you sort of like, yeah, I mean, maybe ETH is actually a good trade now, but yeah, it sort of is kind of funny sometimes when you see people who are like traders on CT who for some reason are still holding Ethereum. Like, what are you doing? How is that possible? But Solana's just clearly cut its lunch, really. I mean, yeah, it's pretty, I mean, it's obvious that Solana, once it was, I mean, after 2023, it was going crazy. Like, everyone was just trading on Solana. No one was trading on Ethereum. So then you're like, well, naturally the attention's going to rotate to Solana.
Yeah, I also think it was still faded like for a long time. Even when Solana was doing really well, it was still in the CT sphere pretty publicly hated on for a long period of time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely didn't catch the Solana pump this time around. Like I said, I sort of bought at 16 at the lows of FTX, but then it kept bleeding. I think it went to like 8 or something until Vitalik saved it with that tweet. But yeah, I mean, I think I caught a pump on Solana from like $20 to $40 or something, but it's not like sold. I don't know, because we just beat. I thought the bear market on Sol and everything was just going to last way longer, but it just kept ripping. And I mean, once I'd sold out, I was like distracted and never bought back in.
Yeah, because I remember you talking to me about XRP, not too long ago. So, what was that like for you going back to those Dino coins and then kind of trading them on perps? Was that, and I think this probably ties into my next question when it comes to technicals, were you very ruthless when it came to like your trading setups, or were you more accustomed to, I guess, the type of coin, like the ecosystem, like did that factor into the way that you traded?
Yeah, I think with perps, my style is, yeah, I've been pretty momentum based, really. Like, I guess, I mean, when I get a bit bored, I'll just like, you know, you trade Bitcoin and stuff a bit, but you know, it's never been that good at it. I mean, the most money on perps is always for me momentum trading, when you can sort of feel, or you can feel like spot is behind it. There's like big spot buying happening on something. Like, that's by far the best conditions for perp trading altcoins, is when you can really feel, or that, yeah, there's a lot of like spot buying for something. And so, yeah, well, Bitcoin had pumped, sort of have like a bunch of this stuff, you know, all just sitting on TradingView, bunch of different charts, and, you know, kept seeing like XRP flashing green. And I didn't know like why, but then got on into the XRP side of crypto Twitter and realized that Trump, or Eric Trump, or whoever, had been saying, like, there'd been all this discussion about like US made coins like being tax free or something. Like it
Yeah.
sounded so stupid. But then also saw Garlinghouse had been like meeting with Trump, like the CEO of Ripple. So there's all this like stuff that I was like looking at and thinking, well, this has been such a Bitcoin dominated cycle. Like all the boomers are up so much on Bitcoin. Like if you're a boomer and you bought the ETF launch of Bitcoin, you're up, at that point, I don't know what it was, like 2x or something. And so what are the boomers going to be buying? And I was like, well, maybe XRP, like, and maybe that's why it's so green.
Yeah.
And, I sort of like had noticed XRP because it was flashing green on my like trading view a lot. And then I dug into why it might be flashing green or like stronger than everything else. And then found these sort of like, I guess I just built a thesis around why it was pumping and why it might keep pumping. And then basically, yeah, it was just like picking spots, like looking for like consolidations and good spots to buy it. And then just basically aping it, little breakouts like on the 1 hour and then riding it up and like for a day before going to bed, close the position, wake up the next day, see what it's doing. If it's consolidating, wait for a good spot.
Yeah.
Just try to ride the momentum all the way up. And like I said, like there was crazy times where, yeah, that Saturday morning Oz time, Friday afternoon US time, you can just feel people getting home from work and buying XRP because the chart is going like it's bleeding up and you could just press long and you would never get tested. Like, you look at altcoin charts that retail aren't buying that are just led by like market makers or us on CT.
Yeah.
And there's like, every level, there's like stop hunts, there's fake outs, there's this, there's that, there's chop, it's going up, it's going down. Like, even if something trends up, it'll like whip up, whip down like 5% each way over and over and over and over while it trends up. Whereas you look at those Dino coins from that like November last year period on the low time frames, like 1 hour or 4 hours, and it's just going straight up. Like no one gets tested. Like, so you could just buy anywhere and, pretty quickly you're just in profit and then you're just sitting there like, when should I sell? How far are we going to hold this thing? So and I mean, when I talk about like trying to identify conditions, like they're the conditions that you want for altcoin trading, really.
I think that's so funny when you said you can feel people getting home and buying XRP.
That's what I've run.
That's crazy. I had a question about, you talked about obviously this cycle in 2024 being a bit of a rough year in terms of opportunity cost because of how hard sort of the on-chain alt season was with Solana. Where do you think we are in the cycle now? Like, is there anything that you think is interesting that's jumping out to you, or anything that you believe is on the horizon?
Yeah, where are we on the cycle? Far out. It's been so weird, right? Like, I mean, you look at Bitcoin and it's just like consolidating at all-time highs, like consolidating at 100K.
Yeah.
And it's like, you look at the high time frame chart, and it's, you're like basically just been up only since December 2022 with like a small consolidation in 2024. So you look at Bitcoin and you're like, well, that chart looks okay. I mean, but then you look at altcoins and, you look at ones like, and there's heaps of them. Like I was looking at the other day, like Nia or something, and all those like sort of alt L ones, like all these big major coins, like or Injective or whatever, Apex, they literally look like 2024 for them was 2021. Like,
yeah.
Crypto. Like they have this massive pump from October 2023 till March 2024, and that's where they all do the biggest multiples. Like Nia does like a 8x, and like you said, Injective does like a 40x or something. Then they all die in the middle of the year, like bleed along the ground in like, July to September. And then they have like a secondary pump in November and December, and now they're bleeding back out again.
Yeah.
Like all those big alts, they just look like maybe we're in a different regime where like Bitcoin is now just basically a macro asset that will trend up gradually over time, and altcoins will have like, you know, these spurts of attention and time. But I mean, to sort of overall, I mean, it sort of feels like Bitcoin probably has another leg in it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think if Bitcoin does have another leg, then you're of course going to get another pump in altcoins. It's just sort of how it goes. Just how long it takes for Bitcoin to get that next leg or not. But I mean, take it as it comes. Like, I'm sort of better at just like, you know, reacting to things rather than doing too much prediction. Like if Bitcoin starts losing 90K down to 85, I mean, you're really wanting it to put in a lower high down there for the next leg, but you're sort of getting pretty nervous about it at that point. Yeah, so I'll just react as it comes, see what happens. If stocks start, you know, having a big correction, there's a bunch of stuff that you can react to that it's hard to predict now. Just hopefully like make the right decisions at the time. Yeah. I mean, there's like sort of certain categories of alts that I think, you know, will do well, depending on what's happening with them. But yeah, until Bitcoin really starts making another leg, I think alts will just like generally keep bleeding.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
It's hard to say. I kind of feel like we kind of brought forward the 2021 cycle to 2024, which I think caught a lot of people off guard because even myself, we were like, oh, if this is 2024, then, you know, 2025 is the year that it's going to go up even more because that's how the cyclical nature of things work. But like you said, if you look at WIF, it looks like, you know, rallied really hard in October, November, all the way up to like March, and sells off really hard. And then in October or September, October, it rallies all the way to November. And you're like, well, that's like literally the 2021 cycle, but like brought forward. I think now, I think the terminology echo bubble was thrown around in like 2023 or 4, where we would have like some reflexivity and a bit of a pump. I think someone made the case, and again, this is me just probably being conditioned to fade everything, but someone made the case that there hadn't been too much innovation since like DeFi and NFTs. I might have that wrong, but it was kind of that level of skepticism that, like, you know, 2021 was so enormous for new people entering the space that, you know, it would be hard to top without any sort of new innovation. And I think that's why people are hungry for things like friend tech and decentralized social media and all that sort of stuff. I think that was like I don't think that narrative really went anywhere in terms of price appreciation, but that's what kind of a lot of people were seeking. It was similar to Rollbit, which I'm sure you heard of as well, when people were like, oh yeah, you know, people aren't going to go the traditional path of like dollar cost averaging us to stocks. They're going to try and hyper gamble their net worth away, and that makes Rollbit a valuable sort of asset to hold because of that. But yeah, I definitely think that alts are usually a pretty good indicator of risk and risk appetite. And I think if a lot of alts are down and it's only really controlled, isolated sectors that get, you know, 3 or 4x and then they kind of bleed a little, it's really hard to say that, you know, the appetite's there to put more money in. I think the key thing here, which really does kind of mess with my mind a little bit, is where BTC is. Because like you said, it's consolidating at all-time highs. Like, that's not a bearish thing, you know? Like, looking at the BTC chart, like, that's really good for BTC maxis, because they're in this position of, like, you know, being considered a joke at November 2022 and then having, like, literally everything unfold all the way to this point, which was finally it gets considered as a traditional asset in the sense that, you know, ETFs are going to support it. Then it gets to the White House or the presidential campaign, and so people start to hear about it more. And now it's at the point where it's being considered for a strategic Bitcoin reserve at a country level, such as the United States. So like that whole trend is like incredibly bullish. And similar to you, I'm not sure if it just gets treated like any other asset and kind of just like blends in with the Mag 7 and, you know, kind of similar to stocks, just like trends up over time without really that much volatility. But yeah, I think with Bitcoin holding up as well as it is currently, I think it gives a lot of hope that there will be some rotation into altcoins. But yeah, I don't think it's been easy pickings thus far this year for altcoins in terms of like investment upside or opportunity. So that's where I'm currently at. Like, I think there's some things that I still believe in, that I'm like, yeah, I think this has users and use case, and I'm happy to kind of have some like bets there. But yeah, I think overall it doesn't really look like momentum's on a tear to the upside. Maybe it changes with like a BTC God candle, or we start to trend up. But yeah, I think I was speaking to Smoothie, IRL Rog, and he was talking to me about how nothing's really interesting him at the moment. So he's like partially flat in the sense that he's like not really looking to take any risk until anything sort of jumps out at him and, is appealing in that sense.
Yeah, I think, I mean, exactly like you said, there just hasn't been a lot of innovation this cycle like we had with DeFi. Like when DeFi happened, it was like, everyone sort of could easily believe that some of this would get implemented into the real world, and there would be like real world use cases, there would be real world adoption. And that's like enough to bring in like, a lot of probably non-crypto people, who are interested in tech probably came into crypto at that time, like the Silicon Valley tech bros and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there was enough to bring in like big players as well, like Tiger Global and stuff. Like there was big actual, like huge money managers investing in crypto stuff. Like there was big money coming in. Whereas this time around, you're sort of thinking like, what is there to get non-crypto people excited? And I guess like the AI agents, sort of played that role a little bit.
Yeah.
Last year, which is kind of good. But yeah, we kind of like the most successful things like Hyperliquid and stuff. I mean, they're all just, enabling crypto speculation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like has always been the case. And that's exciting for crypto people like us. Like, we know BNB's been a good coin. It's like because it's Binance coin.
Yeah.
But you sort of need something new that interests non-crypto people to come and be like, oh, look, this thing might actually change the world, and to get them to like invest some of their money in the space. Because that's sort of, I guess, what we're lacking at the moment, new money coming in. And hopefully we get some new stuff. I mean, I'm somewhat bullish on Tau in that sense. There's like, real world AI teams building in that space.
Yeah.
But outside that, I mean, I don't really know what there is, which is kind of disheartening because you're like, I mean, yeah, where are we going to get new money to come from?
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question was, is there anything like bullish, or is there anything that you're bullish on now that's, irrespective of what the market's currently doing, that you're bullish long-term on, outside of Tau as well?
Long-term, I mean, probably not really long-term. I mean, Bitcoin long-term, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, you sort of like think, because people talk about, oh, we need to onboard people, like we need to increase adoption of crypto, I don't really know what they mean by that, really. I mean, apart from like onboarding to buy our bags, like, I mean, that makes sense, but like, what are you onboarding them to? Like what, I don't really, like, I mean, I do this full time for a living, right? And I use crypto tools to speculate on other crypto, but when I leave my office, office in my house, and go into the real world, I don't use a single crypto thing in my day-to-day life. So, I mean, I don't really know what they mean when we're trying to onboard people, and increase adoption apart from onboard them to bring their money here to buy the stuff that we're invested in. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of pretty bearish altcoins. I mean, yeah, I'm always pretty bullish Bitcoin. And hopefully, I mean, I feel like there are, like, surely we can get like some good payment rails with Solana and, I mean, maybe they already exist and I just like am too much of a degen to even know that this exists. But, like when you go traveling overseas, like, wouldn't it be cool if when I go to pay for something in euro, if I have USD in my Phantom wallet, it just like automatically converts via, you know, a DEX or whatever at the best possible conversion rate for my USD to euro. And we cut out all the like the processing fees of like when you do that with a credit card.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that like, but I mean, if they do exist, someone out there listening, let me know. I haven't come across anything like that actually seems useful like that in crypto.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully some stuff gets built. We'll see.
Yeah.
What about you? I mean, is there anything out there? Can you show me anything that's like, it seems like it has real world use case?
Yeah, like I'm a big believer of trying to make Bitcoin accessible to people to use in terms of like payment rails and just generally anything that's built on Bitcoin. I'm pretty fascinated with, because similar to you, I was very much a BTC maxi to begin with. I was very much peeled in the sense of like, you know, everything's a scam, you know, like Bitcoin's the only thing that has value. And I think that changed with, you know, inflation data started to come in really high, and then they started to cut interest rates, and then Bitcoin was like selling off. I was like, hang on a second. I thought this was like the inflation hedge. Like, why is this going down? And so, yeah, I'm pretty founded on the idea of like building in like Bitcoin, because I think it's like there's so much friction there. I like ordinals. I like runes. I think there's only one project in runes that I really like, which is Quidium. They basically are about to cross like 4,000 BTC total loan volume, and they're a layer one app on top of BTC that does borrowing and lending of BTC against like native BTC against like ordinals and runes. And so like they're the only project that I can think of and have researched there that do a massive amount of volume for users in a like a very friction, like a high friction ecosystem. And I think for me that's like exciting, because it means that like they're trying to make something work in like terrible conditions for users that want to be there and actually want to use the product, which gets me excited. But the whole idea of like, you know, trading that dynamic and trying to invest in there, there's like other layers and other factors that kind of almost get in the way. You can kind of be wrong and right at the same time and not really reap the benefits. But I'm kind of bullish on that, as you know, as long as users continue to want that product. I like what the guys at IMF are doing. So they're local, they're an Australian team, international meme fund. They're trying to unlock a credit market for like memes in general, because they identified that you can't, if you take some of these Solana memes, for example, they have like high FDVs and like not much liquidity. So if any sort of large buyers and sellers were to interact, you know, hit the market sell or the market buy, like full stack type like situation, they could end up like crashing the chart. So their game plan is to set it up so that way you can kind of borrow against your memes and free up cash flow without having to nuke the chart, essentially. So that's something that I'm interested in. But listening to the way that you've talked in this podcast so far, I've kind of realized how not new those ideas are tremendously, if that makes sense, in the sense that DeFi is something that already exists out there. So a different version of it on a different chain for different users isn't exactly like fresh enough to be able to, you know, go full port in and go, oh, like this is it. This is the new thing that's going to bring lots of people in. They're very much like ecosystem plays myself, but
who knows? They were good shills. Maybe, yeah. Maybe we'll get a pump.
Yeah, I know. They're very illiquid. So I probably should caveat that I do own both of those. They are very illiquid. Please, you know, no financial advice here. Do your own research, all that sort of jazz. But yeah, that's what I kind of like. But I think the altcoins have definitely changed my opinion, because I think from personal experience back in 2021, when altcoins pump a lot, you can kind of attribute their success to the token price, and you go, oh, well, this protocol is sought after for these reasons. And so I think this cycle, when altcoins have generally bled to zero, like projects like Layer Zero or ZK Sync or like Starkware, where you kind of go, I think there's some good tech here, but like it's not really that appealing anymore because they're kind of bleeding to zero, and not like, if you were to buy their token, you're not really going to capture the upside of their, you know, development success. So I think that whole dynamic is
it's sort of like, I mean, the tech is like one part of the story, but the users and attention is like so important.
Yeah.
I mean, all those DeFi tokens, like, you could tell such a compelling story about those because like Aave and MakerDAO and all of these different things, like they had really good user metrics. And then, you know, all the stuff around TVL, like, you know, TVL was brand new at the time, like total value locked, like, and you're looking at all these things with just like, you know, 9 figures or like 10 figures, like locked inside the smart contracts. You're like, this is incredible. I mean, these things are holding so much money. Like, so the fundamental story behind those, it's like, you can sort of say that they're proving their use, like they are proven they're being used, sort of thing. At the time, like it's obviously the token is useless, pretty much. But I mean, but at the time, you sort of like the story is compelling that these things will keep growing and that the token price will accrue because of that sort of thing. You know. Especially with like Uniswap talking about at some point, you know, they'll turn on the fee switch and then fees will be directed to holders, and it sort of trades much more like a security or an equity. But it's sort of like the progression of how a meme coin, well, it's not a meme, how a crypto token pumps is the you sort of need these like real fundamental reasons that people can start telling a compelling story about it.
Yeah.
About its growth, really.
Yeah. And Styx said it best, man. Like, he was on his pod, he was kind of talking to me about how it may not have been on the pod, it might have been just in general when speaking to him. He's like, you can kind of switch off and just treat memes for what they are and just trade them for what they are. You don't have to like look at too much data around them to just justify that they are worthless, but they're fun at the same time. And I think that adjustment of getting to memes and trading the memes was really interesting, because that happened in 2023, and like you said, on chain on Solana was something that was incredible. Like, coins would go from like nothing to $2 billion valuation in under a month, and it was on Solana. You know, like that rapid change of state was definitely the alt season, but like more conducive of being on Solana and not on like a centralized exchange, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, it's sort of easy this cycle to be like, oh, memes have like ruined crypto. Like, no one's buying any of the, like, you know, the utility alts or the sex alts or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a way, I guess that's true. I mean, like, a lot of the money has gone into like short-term pump fund sort of stuff. But I mean, back in 2021, we had memes memes existed. Like, BNB went through a crazy season. Like, you know, we had Cum Rocket and what was the other one? Like Safe Move. Had SHIB. Like, how much? You know, imagine how much retail money Shiba Inu absorbed that went to like $80 billion market cap. Like, an incredible. I mean, even Safe Move, I think, went to like 30 billion or something. I don't even know. A lot. And so that's like an enormous amount of retail money went into those meme coins. But there was like enough exciting fundamental, I guess, coins around as well with DeFi that more serious money, like, there's just different types of investors, right? There's people who want to just buy like a meme and like throw $100 in. And if you get 1 million people, you know, throwing $100 in, like word of mouth, viral meme, it's going to pump a lot. But then there's also people, you know, 26-year-old guy who works in tech and he wants to actually invest like $3,000 of his money. He's not going to put, you know, he doesn't want to put that in a meme. So he's looking for a good fundamental thing that he likes, which was DeFi last cycle. We're sort of like, you know, we've got the meme side of things down pat this cycle, but we're kind of lacking that fundamental thing.
Yeah.
I mean, but having said that, I guess it was the AI agents a little bit. They probably brought in a lot of like fresh outside capital.
Yeah. So coming back to when you asked about like what I'm bullish on, I'm bullish on things that you can't really price in. And I think the thing that I've kind of said to a few people is like, I'm pretty bullish if they change the legislation to be more pro crypto. But I know that's like a vague term, but the fee switching or where they can start revenue sharing to token holders is something that you can't really price in because it becomes more like you can put that legislation out there, but then it becomes more dependent on the protocol, its team, its like revenue that it generates, its profit, and its ability to distribute that to its I guess quote unquote shareholders if there are people holding these like worthless governance tokens. So like I think the fact that you said we've got the memes down pat this cycle, I actually really agree with that. I don't think they're saturated to the point where you can't find an opportunity, but I do think they're so broadcasted, and like the same joke is not funny the second time around. And like we had Doge last cycle and SHIB, and then we've just had like WIF and all these other meme coins that have popped off. And like you could say it is saturated in the sense that there's not too many more meme coins to really make like the top 100. But in saying that, like if we did shift back for a more like polished version of DeFi or sex listed alts, that could be something where it becomes a race to then actually value like utility protocols to be able to see if you can get some upside. Or like, I mean, that process of like valuing a stock is a pretty like quick process, but the like the ability to go find those projects or teams might be worth someone's time within crypto, considering users are users and revenue is revenue, maybe. Like that's what I'm kind of thinking is the thing that keeps me a little bit like hopeful in the long run, is that kind of what actually goes pen to paper and is now actually helpful to the crypto industry, because we haven't had anything really apart from saying that they're going to be proactive to the crypto industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think Hyperliquid's like a really good example. I mean, obviously everyone knows Hyperliquid, but that's like a bit of light in like a dark altcoin tunnel that like, yeah, I mean, this really good, product is being used by lots of people, is generating lots of fees. And then he's using the fees to buy back the token basically. So it's sort of like a stock buyback. So that's like I'm almost the ideal crypto thing is like a product lots of people, makes good revenue, and then returns the revenue to holders in some way. And it's just like been very elusive in crypto in general. So seeing that do well is really promising. But I mean, trying to find anything that can do that, but with a real world use case that's not just speculating on crypto will be pretty. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think I'll be messaging you if you find anything, because the way that you've trained your brain to recognize these opportunities is just much, much better than mine. So
that was a lot of stupid stuff as part of that, though.
You look at your Solana wallet from time to time and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I did have a question around, because obviously you do this full time, and so I'd love for you to talk on that like transition and what that was like what you had to say to your boss, what the family and the partner thought at the time when you made that decision, and then to follow on from that, do you feel like there is something after crypto for you that you can go and do comfortably without having to be at the desk and check the charts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it, trading crypto or like investing in crypto and stuff while I was working, and just I'd always sort of wanted to start my own business or do something entrepreneurial or a bit crazy, and thought, if it ever starts going really well, I'd love to just quit this and quit my job and try full-time crypto and just like see what happens. And even if it doesn't work out, at least I like scratched that entrepreneurial itch and had a bit of an adventure and can tell a funny story afterwards. But I'd been at my company like a while and like been promoted and just had like a good track record there and had really good like relationships there. And a couple of like our big clients here that I've done good work with were offering me jobs.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I was pretty ready to leave anyway and
Yeah.
move from consulting to just in-house at a company, sort of for like way more money and a fair bit less stress and less hours. And so I was like, well, now is probably a good time. I'm ready to, move over anyway. So why don't I just see if one of these companies is okay with me taking like 6 months off? And I spoke to them and they were like, yeah, all good. Like happy, like the job will be here. We want you to come across and the job will be here in 6 months. Just give us a ring and then we'll bring you over.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it felt kind of like risk-free. Like I sort of already had like, a good career with some like good achievements and the resume looked good. And then I had a job lined up anyway. So to take 6 months off, the only real risk seemed like, if I just lose all my money, which I was kind of like, I sort of okay with. And by that stage, I felt pretty confident that I wouldn't lose all my money, just like, some of the risk management that I had. And so was like, okay, let's just do it. And girlfriend was pretty supportive. Parents and like family and stuff were also actually like pretty supportive as well, which was kind of cool. Yeah. Just I think because I had it all like lined up, so it was as sort of like risk free as it possibly could be. And then I mean, obviously like whatever, it's like 4 years later, still doing it.
Yes.
I think the transition, it's like there's definitely it's been amazing. Like it's an amazing 4 years. The pros all far outweigh the cons. Like, I don't have any boss. I don't have customers. Like I just do everything that I sit down and do at the computer. I like get back in full. So I'm not earning a salary. You're earning exponential compounding money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then the freedom to just like be able to put it all down and go on, go traveling or do whatever. Is incredible as well. So like 2023 after Rollbit and Bitcoin, like I spent most of that year traveling in Europe and America with some friends.
Oh, dude, that's
so it was like perfect timing really, because Bitcoin just had gone sideways through that whole time. I like missed out on Peep and Pepe and some of that other stuff that launched through. I missed out on the hamster racing and stuff. But yeah, like, went to Burning Man, did all this stuff. And I was with my closest friends. And like, it's kind of rare that, now we're all like, older. Like I'm like in my 30s now and so are they. It's like pretty rare that we all get to spend a massive chunk of time all together. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
To be able to do that with all of them was super cool. And I mean, super cool that like nothing catastrophic happened in crypto while it was happening. So I was kind of lucky in that regard. But then I guess like the downside is like, when you like, you have periods where you've like lost a bunch of money. It's like, it sucks. Like, you like lose a bunch of money over like a 24-hour period. And then you go to dinner with like your partner or your friends and they're like, oh, how are you going? And you're like, I mean, you don't know what to say. You're just like, oh yeah, it's going all right. Like, I mean, there's like sort of say the sums of money that you might have lost in 24 hours. It's just like people can't comprehend it really. So you don't really, say too much. You can't say too much.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, the other part, I guess, is, the actual sitting down and clicking the buttons to like take a trade or not is like a tiny fraction of the actual job. Like the job is it's a 24-hour mental. Every second that I'm awake, I'm thinking about crypto pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's extremely unhealthy, really. I mean, that's just the 24-hour nature of the thing, right? Like price is moving every second of the day. And so you're spending every second of the day, like thinking about whether you should be buying, whether you should be selling, whether you should be holding, if you're missing out on something, like what, and so in that way, like I remember when I was like pre-crypto, like even trading, buying stocks, I would like get the train to work and I would like deliberately not check my phone in the morning until I got to work, just to give my brain a nice like chill time and like read my book on the train and no stress or worries. And now like in crypto, like the picosecond I open my eyes, I'm checking price of Bitcoin. I mean, and it's just, yeah. So in those ways, like your mind is a lot less peaceful now, really, because you're just thinking about it so much and you do it so much. But I mean, when you get a chance to go away and get off screens and go on holiday for like an extended period, like your brain does find a way to like reset and switch off, and then you feel like you sort of get back to your normal mental state. But to be able to do it like full time and profitably and like avoid massive like downswings and stuff like that, I mean, it's like a 24-hour job. Like you need to be thinking about it and on screen a lot. So in those ways, it's kind of tiring. And you, like you said, like do you ever think about what life is like after crypto?
Oh, well, what comes after? Do you feel like you could?
What comes after? Yeah, I mean, for sure for me, there's for sure it has to be an end point. Like I feel like this is like it's a pretty unsustainable way of life.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, as well the hours. Like even last night, in Australia, it's 12:30 midnight. Watching CPI and then how the market's trading after CPI, and then you go into bed at like 3 a.m. or something, like stupid stuff like that just like affects you. So I think in my head, this was always like not like a lifetime thing. And it was always like understanding that crypto and Bitcoin was a speculative mania. Yeah. Will be written about one day, like they write about the tulip mania or the .com bubble or these sort of things. Like, they will talk about NFTs and how they Bored Apes got to like it's fucking $200,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so understanding that I'm doing this to try to like make as much money as I can, and then have the self-awareness to recognize maybe when the mania is winding down or it's getting too difficult because there's way more sophisticated players than I am that are participating and way less new entrants into the thing.
Yeah.
Trying to just like take what I've made and walk away from it, which is like, yeah, I mean, that's an ideal scenario.
Yeah.
But for now, I mean, yeah, still happy to keep doing it and just got to make sure, I take breaks when it's sideways or choppy to like keep your mental state pretty fresh.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So you reckon that the fact that you take these holidays, or just so happens that you take these long periods of time off from the screens, that really does help you stay focused?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just re-grounds you into like real life. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I like going traveling, even just to like Southeast Asia and stuff as well, because we're in Australia. And you see how people are living, and they're like, you go to Vietnam or something, and people are just like, super stoked, like just so happy, and they're living in like the smallest little apartment with no money, and everyone's just like happy as, and it just like it's a good grounding exercise to just be like, you see the numbers on the screen, but you sort of forget what they mean a lot of the time, and when you sort of like are able to appreciate them and realize like the privileged position that you're in, it's you get happy about it again. It helps with the burnout because you like walk away from the desk being like, oh, I'm so over this, like, and then you do that and you're like, oh my God, I'm like living, this is an amazing life. What am I talking about?
Yeah. It's
just changing it up like that.
I found that in 2024 when I took a holiday as well. And it sounds like a little bit too privileged sometimes when you're like, yeah, I went to this place and they were living terribly. And I was like, oh, my life is perfect now because I've compared it to someone else. But it's like it's a hard feeling to describe, but you kind of just get so like grounded, and you definitely feel I think it's like compelled to be present, because I think that's what you kind of realize, is that you have nothing else to do but just kind of like focus on what's in front of you. And you do that for long enough in different environments where you constantly like reevaluating and adjusting, and you forget about everything. And then when you get back, you only remember the good things about why you're doing what you're doing, which is for you probably getting ready to hit another life-changing trade.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was, like 2024. I just thought that would be like, I don't know why. I thought we would be pumping like kind of all year. That was the year. Yeah. So like deliberately didn't take any big trips, like right when that would have been the best time to take a big trip, like through that middle 2024. So yeah, I don't know. I'll probably mess up the timing now, and I'll like go away on a trip like soon. Everything will just pump. I mean, I would be okay with that. Maybe I'll sacrifice myself.
You'll be like snowboarding somewhere and you're like, oh no, it's happening. I got to get back.
I know. Always, always have your laptop with you, case.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we're coming up on the 2.5 hour, and I've actually finished up all of my questions. But yeah, no, dude, it was really good. But I wanted to, because it is your pod, it's your episode. Was there anything else that we may not have touched on that you thought was a good thing to touch on that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've probably like covered it all, like the history and then the what we think's happening. Yeah, I think that was a solid effort. Thanks for having me.
No, dude, it was it was really good, honestly. Like I felt like the way that you approached a lot of things was super helpful for me personally, in the sense when it comes to like finding opportunities. Definitely the change of state for when things are happening, like when you were talking about the BitMEX dislocation and like just generally forcing yourself to combat the instinct to fade. I think that this is all like really, really cool stuff. And hopefully our viewers that have been listening and are watching it back on YouTube get something out of it as well, because I think there's a lot of good stuff. I still think it's very funny that you did the Gary V book trade, and your partner would have looked at you like, what the actual hell is, because 100 books is a lot, man. Like, dude, like 100 books can fill out a wall of a library, you know, like, yeah.
It was probably my favorite trade, even though, didn't make too much, but it was just like, that was good.
Did you tell anyone, just on that, did you tell anyone outside of crypto that you did that trade? Like,
yeah, I thought all my mates, I thought it was hilarious. Like, told them like straight away, took all photo. Like, I was just pissing myself. Thought it was so funny. I mean, there was like a somewhat similar, like I bought that Solana phone, like with
the Saga phone. Yeah.
I wish I bought way more. Like, I think Sisyphus bought like a whole warehouse of them or something, but I just bought one. I know, I wish I bought more, but the resale, I don't know what it's like. It was going, I bought it for like, I don't even know, maybe like 900 Australian or 900 American or something.
Yeah.
And then they were trading on secondary for like 5K. But mine's like, and that, because they have all the airdrops that the Genesis NFT got dropped. But I don't know. I wish I bought more, because then I would sell them, but I've only got one, so I kind of want to keep it as like a memento.
Yeah.
I like collecting like crypto stuff. Like I've got that. I've got like a Pudgy I bought from Big W actually.
Oh, awesome.
I've got the I think it was Forbes or The Economist or something that had like the DeFi edition where they had like CT characters on the cover. Like I've got that.
I remember that one. Yeah, that was a good one that came out, because that was really early 2021 as well when they had that.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was cool.
Yeah, but no, Zen, really, really appreciate your time coming on the podcast, and proud it's your first, honestly, because I reckon you'll do many more after this once, you know, people catch on to how well versed you are in the space and want to pick your brains about new things that pop up and how you trade and whatnot. But it was really, really good to have you on. Really appreciated you making the time, and we'll have to do one in the future again soon.
No worries. Thanks very much. This has been fun.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in the next one.